Selamat malam, Bu Rosa, Mas Enrico, Dani.
Selamat malam.
Oke, udah masuk ya?
Suara saya terdengar ya?
Gimana?
Suara saya terdengar?
Terdengar?
Oke.
Hmm,
Ini kebetulan kamera laptop saya problem, ada kendala, jadi ini terpaksa saya pakai tab.
nggak
Semoga
apa-apa,
aman ya.
jelas Mas.
Oke.
Sekarang,
Malam, Prof. Prof. Rosa.
on the way masih profnya
Masih on
Bu.
the way. Masih on the way, Prof. Rosa. Bu Dani, halo Bu Dani. Long time no see.
Sepertinya masih pada salat terawih nih kayaknya.
Hmm. Masih
Hmm,
terawih kayaknya.
oke. Mata masih belum masuk kayaknya ya.
Hmm.
Pada...
Oh, ini live YouTube ya?
Hah, serius?
Iya, oke. Halo YouTube.
Oh iya bener.
Mm-mm.
Gimana teman-teman di rumah, apakah sehat semua? Semoga sehat semua. Ya Allah, ini kita ada eh, luar biasa. 8.30. Teman-teman di rumah kita masih bakal mulai jam 8.30 ya. Kita juga masih nunggu tamu kita pada hari ini, Mata Polek. Jadi bisa sambil buka puasa dulu, minum-minum es teler, mengembalikan energi yang habis hari ini. sambil kita nunggu, aku pengen sambil cerita-cerita dikit deh ya tentang apa sih MSHP Podcast. Ini tuh kayak episode pertama kita yang mengadakan itu adalah MSHP Universitas Airlangga. Dari prodinya yaitu tadi MSHP ya. Fakultasnya dari Sekolah Pascasarjana. Nah, MSHP ini apa sih? MSHP itu akronim dari Magister Sains Hukum dan Pembangunan. Eh, ini jadi tidak hanya dari sarjana-sarjana S1 hukum saja, tapi kayak saya nih yang sarjana ekonomi juga bisa join di Magister Sains Hukum dan Pembangunan karena basically kita mempertemukan antara ilmu sosial dan ilmu hukum supaya kita bisa membuat kebijakan yang lebih eh, tepat guna, lebih bisa menyentuh masyarakat secara langsung. Seperti itu. Nah, kenapa kita punya podcast ini? Supaya sama ini kita kayak punya banyak banget webinar-webinar, kemudian seminar juga, eh, kelas-kelas umum. Nah, tapi eh, karena rasa penasaran yang luar biasa besar nih ya dari teman-teman, kadang pertanyaan-pertanyaan itu belum dieksplor secara luas. Nah, dengan adanya podcast ini, kita bisa ngumpulin pertanyaan dari teman-teman untuk kemudian eh, kita bicarakan secara mendalam. Nah, jadi kalau teman-teman misalnya punya pertanyaan yang sesuai sama topik podcast yang akan datang, bisa di komen langsung aja ya di bawah.
Nah, sembari kita nunggu nih ya, kira-kira Mbak Vicky sendiri kenapa kok tiba-tiba tertarik pengen kuliah di MSHP? Padahal kan Mbak Vicky sendiri cerita tadi latar belakangnya itu bukan S1 hukum, tapi S1 ekonomi.
Ya bahkan ekonominya ekonomi manajemen aku tuh Mas, manajemen
Hmm.
keuangan. Cuma emang dari awal aku sebenarnya ada sedikit ketertarikan ke arah kebijakan pemerintah seperti itu. Kita
Hmm.
sering tuh bikin apa namanya kayak penelitianku dulu waktu skripsi itu juga gimana sih keputusan kebijakan dari pemerintah itu bisa mempengaruhi perilaku pengusaha. Nah ini kan sebenarnya udah mendekat-dekat sama Roskopon ya teorinya
Hmm.
Roskopon tentang hukum pembangunan gitu. Nah itu terus ketika aku tahu ada jurusan hukum dan bangunan waktu itu juga kebetulan aku pas baca bukunya Mokhtar Kusuma Atmaja yang konsep-konsep
Hmm.
hukum dan bangunan itu.
Hmm.
Nah itu terus oke ini kayaknya bisa membantu menyalurkan eh, harapan itu gitu. Gimana mempertemukan sudut pandang manajemen dengan
Hmm.
kebijakan pemerintah sehingga kita tidak ada lagi tuh semoga ke depannya tidak ada lagi kata-kata bahwa kurang komunikasi antar aktor pembangunan itu gitu. Aku harapannya sih ke situ walaupun mungkin masih agak jauh ya. Kalau
Hmm.
Mas Andiko dulu kenapa masuk ke hukum pembangunan?
Iya, karena kalau mau dibilang ini jurusan hukum, ya tidak hukum murni juga, karena justru prodi MSHP ini menawarkan perspektif baru bagi teman-teman yang memiliki latar belakang pendidikan sarjana hukum. Mengapa demikian? Karena kita juga dikasih perspektif bagaimana hukum itu sebenarnya sangat mempengaruhi dan dipengaruhi juga oleh faktor sosial, faktor ekonomi, faktor politik. Jadi, relasi-relasi itulah yang kemudian menawarkan perspektif baru bagi teman-teman yang punya latar belakang sarjana hukum seperti saya untuk memahami hukum itu seperti apa secara lebih komprehensif. Dan juga itu sangat membantu sih kalau buat saya yang punya latar belakang pekerjaan di bidang hukum, perspektif-perspektif itu justru membantu saya untuk bekerja di dunia hukum. Dan tentu perspektif ini kan sangat membantu juga kan di pekerjaannya Mbak Vicky kan.
Iya dong, banget Mas karena ya dulu ketika masih kita kadang kayak terbagi ya, seperti ada
Hmm.
kaca di antara orang-orang dari bidang tertentu. Nah, ini di hukum pembangunan ini seperti kaca itu sudah tidak ada lagi gitu. Jadi kita bisa tahu,
Hmm.
oh perspektifnya sebenarnya kayak saya nih yang dari sarjana ekonomi itu kayak apa. Bahkan kan sebenarnya ekonomi pun itu kayak banyak kan Mas, ada manajemen,
Hmm.
akuntansi, ekonomi pembangunan itu kan juga berbeda-beda tuh pola
Hmm.
pikirnya. Ketika masuk ke hukum bangunan, oh begini gitu loh. Kenapa kita melakukan apa yang kita lakukan? Karena hukum walaupun sebenarnya fondasi dari semua kehidupan kita selama kita masih warga negara Indonesia, kadang kita eh, miss gitu. Kita nggak tahu apa yang aturan yang harus kita pegang tuh apa. Nah, ketika kita tahu itu akan lebih mempermudah dan eh, hidup kita tuh lebih tangguh gitu istilahnya
Hmm.
gitu kali ya Mas ya.
Hmm. Ya, karena memang kalau kita mengerti hukum, maka pola pemikiran kita pun akan berbeda ya dalam mengambil
Betul,
tindakan untuk kemudian kita memikirkan dampak yang akan timbul itu menjadi jauh berbeda. Itulah
betul.
sebabnya MSHP ini sangat unik teman-teman ya, khususnya juga buat teman-teman yang punya latar belakang non hukum. Itu saya itu ingat di kakak tingkat saya gitu ya, ada dua orang itu malah latar belakangnya dari IT. Jadi mereka punya pengalaman IT, kemudian mereka coba belajar, pengen belajar hukum, dan mereka masuk ke MSAP dan justru mereka menjadi senang gitu, punya perspektif-perspektif baru untuk melihat hukum itu sendiri. Gitu sih kalau
Nah,
kemarin waktu
iya tuh.
sharing-sharing sama teman-teman. Mm-mm.
Benar-benar benar. Karena sebenarnya itu basic life knowledge yang kita tuh harus tahu gitu. Jadi banyak-banyak lah ikutan. Nanti kan ada banyak banget nih seri-series webinar, kemudian ada juga live talk series. Ya, teman-teman bisa cek ya di channelnya
Mm-mm.
Pasca Sarjana Universitas Airlangga.
Gitu. Iya, jadi ya
Kayak
sembari
mm,
menunggu mungkin teman-teman bisa sambil browsing-browsing, lihat prodi MSAP itu di Google, kurikulumnya gimana, jadwal masuknya gimana, kapan ya tes-tesnya, biaya-biayanya. Monggo sembari di- menunggu bisa browsing-browsing dulu.
ini kalau misalnya ada yang tertarik untuk eh, pengen tahu lebih dalam lagi apa sih eh, hukum dan pembangunan pasca sarjana UNER tuh apa gitu. Nah, nanti bisa cek langsung di website PPMB pendaftaran UNER ya. Mungkin nanti bisa dibantu sama tim Humas untuk menambahkan linknya di deskripsi gitu. Karena saya yakin nanti banyak banget teman-teman yang pengen banget masuk UNER, termasuk saya dulu. Saya tuh waktu S1 sempat gagal itu Mas di
Hmm.
PTN UNER. Alhamdulillah
Hmm.
baru bisa di magisternya.
Tak. Ya, ya.
Kayak sekarang itu eh Mas Diko tahu nggak sih ada kayak berita mahasiswa kejadian di universitas juga gitu loh.
Yang mana ini? Berita yang mana ini? Di
Kan ada
UNER
banyak
atau
berita
atau yang
di luar UNER yang lagi viral itu loh Mas.
oh ya.
Mm,
Ya, apapun yang terjadi di case itu, seharusnya stance yang harus kita pegang adalah kita membela korbannya dulu. Ya,
benar benar.
nanti akan seperti apa ya, biarkanlah pengadilan sendiri yang memberikan putusan.
Nah
Iya,
itu
memang
teman-teman tuh.
informasinya kan berkembang terus itu, apalagi kalau kita lihat medsos itu ya.
Karena udah nggak ada filternya lagi tuh. Jadi hanya kita sendiri yang bisa memfilter kita sendiri yang harus paham apa sih dampak dari ya itu tadi yang Mas Enrico ceritakan kayak
Hmm.
kalau misalnya kita ngerti hukum, kita jadi tahu tuh dampak dari perbuatan kita apa gitu. Nah, itu kan yang
Hmm.
bisa jadi rem gitu ya Mas ya buat
Iya,
perilaku-perilaku yang mungkin tidak baik seperti itu.
iya, tepat sekali. Oke, kita masih menunggu.
Oh,
Mm-mm.
Jadi kita hari ini mau ngobrolin apa sih, Mas? Sambil kita nunggu Marta nih.
Mm, mm-mm. Ini kita akan bahas soal perlindungan anak, ya.
Child
Apalagi kita akan
protection and
belajar
child welfare.
eh, apa sih sebenarnya perlindungan anak itu bagi dalam perspektif hukum Amerika gitu ya. Karena kebetulan kita akan mewawancarai ya begitu ya praktisi hukum yang sangat menekuni atau spesialisasinya ini bidang ini ya, bidang perlindungan anak, child protection and child uh, welfare begitu ya. Jadi kita akan belajar banyak soal ini dan kita pasti akan ya mencoba mengetahui relevansinya juga. Karena kalau mau lihat di Indonesia kan akhir-akhir ini child welfare, case-case berdasar yang mengacu pada kesejahteraan anak kan cukup viral ya akhir-akhir ini ya Mbak Vicky ya. Ya,
Benar-benar banget.
hmm, di- kita bisa belajar nih dari Amerika kira-kira gimana sih kita melihat case-case seperti ini. Ya,
Oke. Kalau mau tanya Mas Andiko dulu tahun angkatan berapa sih untuk di MSHP itu?
saya angkatan 22 genap hitungannya.
2022 berarti. Ha.
22. Jadi saya masuk kuliah itu Januari 2023 tapi.
Oh iya, aku dulu kayaknya Agustus deh. Agustus 2024. Berarti Mas Andiko keluar, aku masuk.
Oh enggak, saya masih tesis waktu itu.
Oh, masih
Saya
tesis ya?
lulus, ya, saya lulus Januari 2025.
Heeh.
Mm-mm.
Ah, cepet juga ya Mas berarti.
Iya,
Cepet
cepat
banget
juga.
loh itu.
Iya,
Iya, teman-teman yang tertarik buat daftar di MSHP, FYI nih, untuk pembukaannya itu ada 4 gelombang setiap tahun. Itu tadi di bulan Januari, di bulan Juni, sama di bulan apa lagi ya, Mas? Aku kurang hafal sebenarnya.
iya. Seingat saya memang per semester itu pasti ada 4 kali gelombangnya. Ya, dan
Mhm,
untuk
ada
jadwal pastinya silakan cek di ini ya, teman-teman.
langsung di
Websitenya
PPMB
ada.
pendaftaran UNER.
Mm-mm. PMB, UNER. Ya, ya.
Hmm, ini. Sebenarnya sih kalau misalnya teman-teman punya pertanyaan, bisa langsung di komentarnya, di kolom komentar. Karena untuk sesi pertanyaan tuh nanti bakal lumayan terbatas ya. Jadi bisa disampaikan dulu aja di komentar, nanti kita sambil pilih juga tuh pertanyaan yang mungkin paling menarik ya.
Iya, benar sekali. Nanti kita bantu pilih. Jadi teman-teman kalau mau ada pertanyaan silakan ditulis di kolom chat. Kalau mau dalam bahasa Indonesia nggak apa-apa, nanti kita bantu terjemahkan. Seperti
Bener
itu ya,
banget.
Mbak Kiki.
Jadi jangan takut sama bahasa Inggrisnya, kita
Hmm.
pasti bakal bantuin gitu.
Hmm.
Jadi ini karena memang kita tetap buat teman-teman mahasiswa Indonesia juga ya, terutama walaupun tidak terbatas mahasiswa aja, semua juga boleh join. Tadi teman-teman dari lawyer keluarga di Indonesia juga ada yang mau ikut nih Mas katanya.
Oh ya, silakan. Ini terbuka untuk umum kok. Kalian kita akan mendengarkan ini dari seorang praktisi begitu ya, seorang attorney
Benar,
di US. Nah, attorney itu apa sih? Kalau di US, attorney itu adalah teman-teman atau seseorang yang sudah lolos suatu ujian khusus, namanya bar exam. Kalau di Indonesia itu mungkin persamaannya adalah upah, ujian profesi advokat. Jadi, jika seseorang sudah dinyatakan lulus dari bar exam, maka dia itu sudah memiliki izin untuk beracara di pengadilan sebagai kuasa hukum atau yang kemudian disebut sebagai seorang attorney. Ya, jadi eh, mirip-mirip seperti advokat yang ada di Indonesia, cuman memang pendidikannya jauh lebih panjang di US dibandingkan di Indonesia. Kalau saya tidak salah ingat, 4 tahun lebih pendidikannya mereka.
Oh, wow.
Hmm. Jadi
Yang
tentu
juga.
ini akan sangat memperkaya kasana pemikiran setiap kita yang ada di sini ya, untuk mendengarkan dari seorang practitioner langsung begitu.
Benar, dan teman-teman hukum itu kan ada ininya Mas, ada mazhabnya. Kalau
Mm-mm.
nggak salah mazhab ya, ini penelitian pembanding komprehensif research. Nah, ini bisa nih jadi dasar untuk komprehensif research bandingin gimana tuh kebijakan-kebijakan atau aturan-aturan yang ada di US dengan gimana supaya bisa di eh, adaptasi sesuai dengan kebutuhan Indonesia. Oke, kita sudah semakin mendekati jam mulainya nih, Mas.
Mm-mm.
Oh iya nih, aku dapat info kalau misalnya teman-teman ada yang tertarik untuk mendaftarkan diri di MSHP UNER, ini dibuka sampai dengan tanggal eh, 6 April 2026 pukul 7 di gelombang 1 tahun ini ya.
Oke.
Oke, kita udah bisa lihat nih ada Marta. Hello Marta.
Halo.
The
I
mic
think
is
it's
not
still unmute.
unmuted
Uh,
yet.
still muted. Sorry, still muted.
There, sorry.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
We are doing good. We are doing good. And how
Amazing.
about you?
How about
Good,
you?
good. I'm just
Okay.
setting things up just because we had a little problem with Wi-Fi in our house, so I'm just trying to set things up.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Is it
there we
okay if we start now, or do
go.
you want to set up your Wi-Fi first?
No, it's fine.
It's fine. Okay. Okay, guys, so we're gonna start now. Welcome to Protecting Children Through Law. I'm Vicky, one of your hosts today. I'll be moderating our conversation, and I'm joined by Enrico, my co-host and a fellow lawyer, who will get us through the legal dimension of child protection in the United States. In this episode, we turn our attention to the child welfare and family court system in New York City, institution that operates at the intersection of law, social services, and family life. When concerns about a child's safety arise, the response involves more than a single agency or courtroom. It engages caseworkers, attorneys, judges, service providers, and families, navigating procedures that are often urgent, complex, and deeply personal. These systems are tasked with protecting children from harm while also respecting family integrity, due process, and the long term consequences of state intervention. So, how do these systems function in practice? What standards guide judicial decisions about removal, reunification, or termination of parental rights? And where do reform efforts stand as policymakers and practitioners seek more equitable and effective outcomes? To explore this question, we are joined by Marta Polak, whose experience and insight over a thoughtful perspective of how law, policy, and real-world implementation shape the lives of children and families in New York City. Marta, maybe you can introduce a little bit about yourself before we go into the topic.
Sure. Okay. I am an attorney, and actually have a master's in social work and as well. So I have a JD and an MSW, and I originally worked as a social worker in child welfare in New York City in preventive services, which is, can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Oh, which was designed to prevent placement into foster care. So it was as sort of a holistic, it was designed initially for a holistic approach to sort of support families so that there would not be a need for any removal of children due to abuse or neglect. So I did that for basically 2 years, and then I went to law school. And when I graduated from law school, I worked for the Legal Aid Society Juvenile Rights Division, where I represented children in abuse neglect petitions, as well as delinquency and persons in needs of supervision petitions. And I did that for several years. And then I'm sorry, there's some work going on in our house. Then I worked with a law professor at Yale Law School working on a book on representation of children, because initially there's been a change, and I can talk about that later, of the way that children are represented in many states. And so part of that was a survey of many states. That was many years ago. So things have changed. And then after that, I went back to practicing, and I worked at a place called the Children's Law Center, where we represented children in custody proceedings, as well as family offense petitions and abuse and neglect petitions. And then I did that for around 17 years. And then I joined the panel, which is a group of attorneys that is vetted to represent adults and children in family court. And I'm doing that now. And I represent adults and children in custody, visitation, child protective, delinquency, and family offense petitions and persons in need of supervision, although that part of the law is not really used so much anymore. And so that's what I'm doing now.
I see. Thank you, Martha. As a lawyer working in this field, you've seen firsthand how legal doctrine translate into real decision about children's safety and family integrity. Since Enrico and you are both bring legal perspective to this conversation, I'd like now to turn to Enrico. So, Enrico, as a fellow lawyer, could you guide us into the broader discussion on how child protection operates across the United States?
Thank you, Vicky, for your kind introduction. Is my voice audible to you all?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Enrico, as been mentioned by our nice host, Miss Vicky. I'm also a lawyer, but I'm more practicing in employment law. So maybe my perspective on child protection and child welfare is not that advanced. So maybe we can have a very fruitful discussion about this matter. And before I start, is it okay for me to call you Mrs. Polak? Or
You can call me
should I?
whatever. You can call me Martha. You can call me whatever. Martha's probably whatever's best for you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Maybe I will stick with Martha, is if that's okay for you. Okay.
Absolutely. Is this going to be? Is
Yes.
this going to be audio, or is it going to be visual too?
If you have a
Actually, we're
difficulty with
also
your
in YouTube.
Okay. I'm just asking. No problem.
okay, yeah. Okay. Maybe with your broadened background, professional background as an attorney and also as a social welfare officer, yeah, in child uh, affairs. Maybe can you start our discussion for tonight here in Indonesia? Why child protection and child welfare is different with adult welfare and adult protection. Maybe we can start with that matter, the specialty about child welfare.
Okay, so the way it started
Mm,
in the States is that what guides child, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice.
mm,
What guides child protection in the United States is the best interest of the child.
mm,
In terms, and there are separate courts for that, family court.
mm,
So
mm,
there's criminal court and civil court. Family court is a civil court.
mm,
But in New York, at least, in some states that includes divorce and
mm,
but in New York State,
mm,
it court is primarily for non-divorce. So for custody visitation, child abuse, child
mm,
protection, delinquency cases, and PINS cases, and certain family offense cases, there's jurisdiction in family court. And what guides family court is the best interest of the child. Or, Originally, that meant that children, while they were represented by attorneys, the attorneys were guided by best interest of the child. That has subsequently changed so that there's direct advocacy. So attorneys for the children now in New York City and New York State do direct advocacy, which means that we represent, what the child
mm,
wants,
mm,
just like an adult, because in an adult case, in adult protective or any cases where we're talking about the rights of an adult, they primarily, unless
mm,
they are for some reason incapacitated,
mm,
they direct their representation. So there's been a movement now in New York for
mhm,
children their representation as long as they can make a knowing, voluntary,
mm,
and their judgment. So when I started in family court, we were guided by the best interests of the child.
mm,
Now, when we represent children, we're guided by direct advocacy unless they can't make a knowing, considered, and
mm,
voluntary judgment.
mm,
When I'm representing an adult in family court, I do whatever they say unless they're incapacitated. I've had
mm,
clients who are in comas
mm,
and things like that, and then they're assigned a guardian ad litem. But children are only always represented really by one person. And if they can't make a knowing, considered, involuntary
mm,
judgment, the attorney for the child then substitutes judgment and is guided by the best
mm,
child.
mm,
Uh, Now the person who makes the decision, the best interest of the child, because that's the overriding umbrella of all decisions in
mm.
family, is the judge.
Okay. Yes.
So the judge can no longer rely necessarily on the attorney for the child advocating for the best interest because they're doing what the child wants. And children, as we know, don't always make judgments that are in their best interests.
Okay. Is there any growing number in in past couple of years, maybe in New York, about cases on child protection in New York State Court?
I
Like
mean,
maybe um, I don't know in United States practitioner in United States U.S. Law, but in Indonesia there is some special cases that uh, it's need to be here to the court. So like for instance, like decision of deciding the legal guardian for the child. Is that also some cases in New York court, or is there any certain cases that should be brought up?
wait, so do you mean that if a child like is abused or neglected by their parents, then they'd be removed from that family?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so in Article 10, abuse,
Mm,
neglect, child protective petitions,
mm,
that always, the state brings, or the city in New York, brings a case to family court if there are allegations of abuse or neglect that rise to the level where they believe that there needs to be court involvement for the parent to be ordered to do certain services. So in New York, we have the State Central Registry, which is the it is the clearinghouse for all calls of child abuse and neglect. In New York State and the US in general, there are mandated reporters. So a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, any medical professional, and any educational professional, anyone who works in a school and anyone who works in the medical field are mandated reporters. So if they see any abuse or neglect or potential alleged neglect, they have to make a call into the State Central Registry. In addition, people who are just concerned, like if you're a neighbor and you see a child's being abused, you can call into the State Central Registry. The state, and in New York, it's the Administration for Children's Services, has to send out a worker within 24 hours to interview everyone involved. And the goal is not to remove children. The goal is to preserve family relations. So the worker works with the family. If it's an emergency, like if a child's severely abused, they have the power to remove that child from the situation. However, in most cases, they do an assessment. They offer parents family services. There's services, preventive services, which I worked in, sort of assistance getting medical assistance. They do a lot. If the family works with them, they don't necessarily come to court to file a petition. If the family's not with them, then they come to court and they file a petition. Sometimes they'll ask for a removal, sometimes they won't. If they ask for a removal, the judge has to make a decision whether the child is in imminent danger of harm, both emotional and physical. If there's a removal, the parent can ask for an emergency hearing where there has to be a proof, some sort of proof that there's danger. However, in that hearing, like the rules of evidence are a little more lax. Hearsay is admissible because there's an emergency hearing. If there's no removal, the judge can order the parents to comply. With services. If they, but if they don't, they risk a removal because they're not doing what they need to do, and imminent risk can arise. So that's sort of how families get into family court. Is through, if there's been a call in, the Administration for Children's Services is concerned, they're offering services, the family doesn't accept them. That's one way it kicks into court. The other way is if there's been significant harm to the child.
Okay, let's dig more if a child being under protection by the court. Okay. Hello.
Actually, I'm a little bit interesting about, the technicality of these services by government, because in Indonesia, the cases are usually happens in low to middle class family. I mean, how about the cost of it, of help? Martha, where are you? I think we're losing Martha.
I think we lose Miss Martha. Ya, jadi memang
kayak menarik ya sih, maksudnya di Indonesia bisa dilakukan juga, cuma balik lagi nih gimana biayanya, karena itu yang sering kita khawatirkan kan, dengan kondisi negara kita masih berkembang gitu loh.
Iya, benar sekali. Makanya saya mau coba gali soal ini praktisnya di US seperti apa. Apalagi kalau di sini kan eh, protection of harm itu ya, dan juga soal best
Mhm.
interest of child. Ya, kalau kita
Mhm.
lihat di Undang-Undang Perlindungan Anak, kalau saya tidak salah ingat,
Jelas, jelas. Mhm.
eh, kalau ada seorang anak begitu ya, di bawah perlindungan pengadilan, maka selain perlindungan fisik, dia juga dipastikan hak-haknya sebagai anak dipenuhi. Contoh, hak untuk bermain, hak untuk mendapatkan pendidikan, hak untuk bertumbuh di lingkungan yang sehat. Jadi mungkin ini bisa ya kita itu. Halo, Marta.
Sorry about
Sure.
that.
Hello again, Marta. Where are you?
Halo.
I lost you for a minute. Sorry, our internet is out. So
Oke.
I'm on my phone, so it
Hmm,
makes it a little more unstable.
Oke.
It's okay.
Oke, can we continue?
So anyway, I don't know where you
Yeah.
lost me.
So, the last word is that if the child is being under protection by the court, then it need to have a certain protection. And then we lost you.
Okay, so did I talk about the fact that in some cases, had I already spoken about how in some cases children that they don't come to court?
Oh, not yet, not yet.
Okay, so
Mm,
sorry about that. So what
mm,
happens is, so a call, you heard when a call is called into the state central
mm,
registry, right?
mhm. All right.
Okay. And then ACS, the
Mm,
Administration for Children's Services, goes out to the
mm,
family. They
mhm,
make an assessment, they offer services. If the family doesn't take the services, they sometimes come to court.
mhm.
Is that where I lost you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so if they come to court, the
Mhm,
judge, at that point, they can ask for the judge to either remove the child or to let the child stay. And
mm,
they tell the judge what services they're asking the family to do. The
mhm,
judge, the family's not ordered to do services until there's an
mhm,
actual trial. However,
mhm,
if they don't do the services, they risk losing their child because they're
mhm,
not doing what they need to protect the child.
mhm,
Um, so often they agree to do the services, even though they're voluntary, up until the point that there's an actual trial.
mhm.
Um,
Okay.
if they remove the child,
Mm,
the family has 3 days to ask for an emergency hearing, in which time the ACS, the
mhm,
Administration for Children's Services, has to prove that there's imminent risk and that the imminent risk to the child's safety is overrides the risk of removal, which is the harm, the trauma of removal of the child. Do you have any
mm.
questions or?
Yeah, I think Vicky have one for you about the technicality. Vicky?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty interesting because in US, when there's the case of problem in child welfare and protection, uh, there's this system to protect them. But Indonesia, as a developing country, um, we these cases usually happens in the to middle class families, which they usually too afraid to tell to the authorities because of the money problems. I
Right.
wonder, in the system in the U.S., how is that the cause of it?
Mhm,
Well, there's lots of, you mean the cause of abuse and neglect in New, I can really only speak to New York because I'm
mhm,
not really into cities, because I'm not
mhm,
really, I don't know much about rural areas. And I
mhm,
think some of the issues are similar, but they're somewhat different. There's different support systems for
mhm,
families. In the city, I mean, the for the most part, the families that are impacted or are involved in the child welfare system are of lower economic status. Although, I mean, I've had clients who are not, who are well off, whose parents are well off. My children aren't normally well off. But their parents are well off, and those parents usually hire private attorneys. So for the most part, I'm dealing with people of lower economic status. Some of the issues, there's a big case, it's Nicholson. I can send you this site afterwards, said that a child cannot be removed for due to poverty, basically. So, so like if you're homeless, if like you're unhoused or something like that, the Administration for Children's Services has to sort of help you find housing. I mean, and in New York City, and all over the US, there's a housing crisis. So, but there are shelters and family shelters. So the Administration for Children's Services has to assist the family into going to a family shelter. If there's no food, they have to help them find a way, like a place to get food, a food pantry, or they have to help them get food stamps or some sort of economic sort of assistance. So the primary reason for ACS being involved is, well, if say a family has no food and they don't sort of agree with the assistance, they're like, no, we don't want any help, or we want to live on the street, then the children would be removed because they're not making themselves available to the assistance. But the primary reason that cases come to court, because most families want the help, is because of drugs and alcohol abuse, physical abuse, mental illness on the part of the parents, cases where parents leave children alone. We have pretty strict rules in the US in New York about leaving children alone, what age a child can be left alone, although there's not a strict formal, like strict age. I mean, I've had cases where like 3-year-olds are left alone. I mean, overnight. So that's dangerous. So those are the primary sort of reasons why why cases come to family court, come to the court system. But because of the state central registry, even if a family doesn't want to, and families don't often seek help themselves from the Administration for Children's Services, or if they do, I mean, there's so many other places for families to seek help that they don't normally go to the Administration for Children's Services. Usually a family gets involved with them if someone else calls the state central registry, like a teacher. If a child comes to school and has a big mark on their face, the school has to call in a report or something like that.
Okay.
Or if a child's ill and isn't being brought to the doctor regularly, that doctor has to call in a report.
Oh, I see, I see.
I see.
So we actually have audience already wanted to ask question. What do you think, Enrico?
Yeah, I think it's okay that maybe other sorry,
Okay.
other audience
This
wanted
is really
to,
interesting, Martha.
yeah,
And
because
audience
this is
already
not,
have so much curiosity. Yeah.
yeah, this is a very interesting topics about child protection, and this is not a class, so we are doing maybe an interactive podcast, something
No,
like
no
that.
problem. So
So I
anybody
think,
has any questions?
yeah, maybe I can
Yeah,
open the
actually,
Q&A. First of all, I would like to give Pak Rizky to ask the question. Pak Rizky?
Thank you, Pak Enrico,
Yeah.
Ibu Vicky. Hi,
Hello.
Ibu Marta. You can call me Rizky, but not too risky. But I'm a student here. You won't believe it, but I am. Based on your experience, I would like to ask you something that how
Sure.
does the code ensure that the voice and wishes of the child are properly represented during the legal proceeding? Thank you very much.
So all children in abuse neglect petitions are get assigned attorneys immediately. So from the time they're born till 18, any child involved in the child protective system, court system, gets an attorney. For delinquency cases, all children get an attorney. In delinquency cases, a parent can hire an attorney or get an assigned attorney. In custody and visitation cases, only verbal children primarily get attorneys. And during the process, the attorneys, just like every other attorney, is guided by the code of ethics. So the court just has to trust that the attorney is doing their job just like any other attorney. So, and because it's direct advocacy in New York, it is a much it is exactly like the role of any attorney. So there's no oversight other than ethics that guides a attorney for a child any more than an attorney for an adult. The ethical standards are the same in New York, especially because it's direct advocacy.
Okay, thank
Is
you,
there any
Martha.
follow-up, Pak Rizky?
It's quite good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
good.
Thank you.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay. Bu Novi, you can state your question.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Hi, Martha.
Hi.
My name is Novi. I would like to ask a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, in the US, I think mandatory reporting is central, right? Am I right?
Right.
In Indonesia, including Surabaya, where I live now, a lot of abuse is handled informally, actually, through family mediation, neighborhood leaders, school settlement. And I would like to have your perspective. Maybe what safeguard exists in the US model to prevent maybe over-reporting and under-reporting, and what elements do you think could realistically work in a context where here families fear a stigma and authorities are sometimes distrusted? Thank
So,
you.
oh, no problem. So that's a really great question because in New York, at least, we have a new mayor. There is a movement to, and I think it's a good movement to limit, well, to get rid of anonymous reporting, which I think is very important because unfortunately, people use the child protective system in custody and visitation cases to get back at the other parent. So if I'm a parent, this happens all the time in custody and visitation cases, and I want custody of my child, I file for custody if I don't live with the other parent. And then as a way to get back at each other, they often make these false reports into the state central registry, which is awful because there is absolutely stigma associated with a call to the state central registry. In addition, once a call has been made to the state central registry, your name stays in the state central registry, even if the case is investigated and it's determined that it was fake, your name's still there. So it pops up repeatedly because if you want to work with children or you want to be a nurse, work with elderly, they do a search, and if your name pops up, people are always like, why did their name pop up, even if it was false claim, and it's very hard to get that erased. So there's not a lot of protection for that. So there's a movement to get rid of anonymous reporting, which is good because honestly, that will stop a lot of people from making reports because it's actually illegal to make false reports. It's very infrequently prosecuted, but it has been prosecuted. And I mean, unfortunately, the penalty isn't that high, but it at least it's some deterrent. So that's a movement now in New York, and I think it's a good movement. For mandatory reporting, people don't really like to report, first of all, because it's tiresome. It's like a long process. I mean, anytime I had to report a case, it always took 24 hours of sort of being on call. And so there's, at least in New York, there's a movement away from reporting, but instead sort of trying at schools, trying to help a family. Like obviously, if it's a very serious, if it's an abuse case, they have to report. Like if a child comes in with a broken arm, they have to make a report. But there is definitely a move away from just reporting things that are not necessarily reportable. Does that answer your question? Because it does mean also that families don't go to the Administration for Children's Services when they do need help, because they actually, the Administration for Children's Services actually has some services that can help families, but they're so afraid that they'll end up in the system that they don't utilize it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I get
No
your point.
problem.
Okay. Thank you, Bu Novi. We still have one more audience wanted to ask
Sure,
a
sure.
question. Pak Lukman, or yeah, Pak Lukman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi Mata.
Hi, how
Thank
are
you.
you?
Yeah. Actually, I want to ask you if is there in New York there's some regulation or act in which regulating how the teacher or the staff to discipline the student in the school, and is there any is it common in that of a, or is there any regulation to protect the school, the teacher, or even the student from the criminalization
Okay.
sue from the public area? I think because maybe because the student is very naughty and they make some doing some unrule
Kasus viral.
yeah in
Mm.
the neighborhood, so
Okay.
they doing criminalization against the student or the teachers. Is there any regulation to protect
Okay.
the
Okay.
So
Me?
the, oh, I'm sorry, can you see me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very clear.
yeah
So the issue is in really, I think in all of the United States, there's no, teachers cannot physically discipline any child. And in fact,
Okay.
they really cannot touch children in general. There are very strict rules about that. I mean, hold on one second.
Okay.
Because in Indonesia, there are like several cases happening right now, like mostly abuse to children.
Right. So
Done by the teacher. Yeah.
right. So in the United States, it's just not allowed. In public schools, definitely. Like you can't, I mean, like my son's a teacher and there's a severely autistic child in his class. And she like throws tantrums. So he's allowed to, like, if she's on the floor, pick her up and sort of settle her. But there's no physical discipline at all allowed in usually they send them out of the classroom. They can be suspended, they can be expelled, but there's no physical discipline at all. And in fact, in New York, parents can only physically discipline their children as long as they don't leave marks and bruises. Once they leave marks and bruises, then ACS can get involved. So you can physically discipline a child, but you cannot leave a bruise or a mark. You cannot hit a child so hard that you leave a mark. That is actionable.
I
Okay.
see. Yes. I don't know, Enrico. Is there any
Mungkin
regulation on
mungkin
it
Bu
in
Fauzi bisa dijelaskan. Maksudnya gini, maksudnya ada nggak sih ini kan tentang mendisiplinkan itu kan ada apa ya? Mungkin nggak hanya tentang di physically.
Halo,
Merasa itu
Pak
kebangetan
Lukman?
harusnya anak nggak. Halo, Ji.
mungkin bisa
Suaranya agak
diketik Pak
kurang
Lukman.
jelas, Pak.
Iya, bisa diketik ya. Oke.
Iya, sudah terketik di chat, Pak. Pertanyaan saya.
Okay. Okay. Let me help you to translate what is Pak Lukman wanted to say to you, Martha. So, is there so in Indonesia, for context, physical discipline is still a common practice for school to to discipline the student, and because it is still a common practice in Indonesian education system, many of the parents who doesn't like or even disagree with such method later decided to make a police report about child physical abuse done by their teacher. And then because of that, several teachers organization call for Indonesian teacher to do a strike because in their belief, physical discipline act is still a must to do in Indonesia to to make children have
Discipline.
better discipline, better how to better act, to socially act. That's because it's still the common practice for Indonesian. And then because of that, they also call to do a special legal protection for the teachers. So whenever they do some sort of discipline, including a physical discipline, they wanted to have some sort of legal immunity from any legal sue or from any police report. So maybe that's the context why is Lukman wanted to ask to you. I think is there any same practice but in New York? And because you mentioned that physical discipline is not tolerable, right, in the US. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, parents can physically discipline their children as long as they don't leave marks or bruises. However, sort of culturally right now, and probably for the last 50 years, I would say, physical discipline has sort of been especially educators has been sort of I'm trying to think of a good word, sort of discouraged. So teachers themselves do not, in general, certainly in New York, do not support physical discipline. They don't like their children to be hit by their parents or anybody, because I mean, one of the things is teaching children bodily integrity. I mean, it's sort of cultural at this point in New York that like everybody has a right to their own bodily integrity, so they cannot be touched without permission and things like that. So it has been physical discipline by teachers has been so long that it's just not tolerated, that if you hit a child and you're a teacher, you're fired, and there's no immunity, because it's just been so long that it's just not tolerated. In private schools, I think it's a little more, some schools will fire a teacher immediately if they hit it, but then there are some schools that don't. So, but in public schools, there's no immunity for teachers. There's immunity for teachers if they make a report to the state central registry. They cannot be prosecuted for that, because, then that would just create a lot of problems. So they call in the state central registry. That's where there's immunity for teachers and mandated reporters.
Jadi kalau di USA itu benar-benar nggak boleh sama sekali itu ya, berarti menghukum mendisiplinkan ya, kalau misalnya memang orang tua nggak terima, dituntut ya udah fired gitu ya.
Yeah,
But
something like
I just kind of wonder, Martha, is there any guidance for teachers how to discipline a child, like when they do something bad, like is there any guidance from the government to the teachers or principals on how to act on that?
Yes, I mean, because in order to be a teacher, you have to have a license, certainly in New York. I actually don't know that much about this, but I do now because my son is in graduate school for education. And so that is thank you. That a big part of it is how to discipline, how to control a classroom. Because I mean, in New York, there are problems, right? I mean, probably not. There are problems that don't exist in Indonesia. There are guns. I mean, like, there are problems, discipline problems in New York. But there's definitely a large part of his curriculum is how to control a classroom, how to deal with a child who's being disruptive. For children who have mental health problems, usually there's a paraprofessional, someone who sits in the classroom with them and supports them. Sometimes it's one-on-one paraprofessional, sometimes it's two-on-one, three-on-one, like you might have one paraprofessional with 3 children. It depends on the severity of the child's issues. So, like for the autistic child who was in my son's class, normally she has a one-on-one para, but she was out that day, the para. So, and they call them paras. So that's one way that the schools sort of handle discipline problems, is that there are always 2 teachers in a classroom, unless there's one class of classrooms that don't have that. It's gifted and talented. And those only have 1 teacher, which is sort of interesting because they're the brightest children, but they only get 1 teacher because they tend to be well behaved. And so there's a lot of support in the classroom. They tend to give, especially for before high school. Up until high school, there's a lot of support for teachers in classrooms, so that discipline there is little need for physical discipline. And teachers are so trained, they know they can't hit a child, and they know how to sort of work with children. I mean, that's a big part of the curriculum of their training.
I really agree with that. I think di Indonesia, untuk kita melupakan satu hal sih, teaching itu bukan cuma sebuah pekerjaan ya, tapi juga sebuah skill, iya nggak sih? Jadi ketika kita menghadapi berbagai macam karakter nih kan, ibaratnya kita jadi orang tua punya 2-3 anak aja kayak udah pusing kan, karakternya beda-beda. Ini apalagi ada bisa 30-40 anak kayaknya ya di Indonesia gitu kan. Nah, tapi cara mendisiplinkannya juga jangan dianggap bahwa ketika dia melakukan kesalahan dia harus dihukum. Karena ini kan masih anak-anak ya, perkembangan
Oke. Iya.
otaknya masih berbeda gitu. Maka ketika dia dibiasakan dengan kekerasan itu juga sama sekali nggak baik, yang justru akan menciptakan orang-orang dewasa yang itu tadi abusive dan lain-lain seperti itu. Nah, so there's a follow-up question, however.
Iya.
So how the teachers and educators protecting and uh, keeping their integrity without their pride if they cannot discipline the classroom? How would you give perspective on this, Martha?
I mean, just from my own experience, I guess I'm not a teacher, so I'm not in the classroom, but I mean, as an attorney, one of the things in my old job is I was supervisor. So occasionally I had to go deal with issues. I guess children, it just doesn't come up. And I don't know the way that they separate kids, they send kids to the principal, they establish from my understanding, they establish from the beginning, from the first day of school, what the boundaries are of behavior and what the consequences are for bad behavior. And if a child is continuously out of control, the child gets suspended, which means they can't go to school for several days. So there are consequences, there are punishments that are not physical. And children expect, and I think it's very important in New York, school to be a safe place. And for them, especially if their home is chaotic, is for their teacher to not be chaotic. So to not hit them, to treat them as with respect, because sometimes at home they don't get that respect. And I'm not saying that necessarily physical discipline is not respect, but sort of culturally in New York at this point, I mean, physical discipline is just not tolerated by anyone but parents. I mean, and siblings, of course, hit each other all the time, but like the principal will come to the class. There's a fair amount of, there's just children. If a child's too problematic, they'll be removed from the classroom. They'll have to go to a special classroom. I mean, there's a lot of safeguards in place so that children do not get hit by teachers. It's just not tolerated.
I agree with you. Anak-anak harus merasa aman gitu, karena itu balik lagi mereka sedang belajar bagaimana dunia ini. Ketika kita perkenalkan kekerasan ke mereka, itu tidak membentuk disiplin tapi membentuk kekerasan yang mereka tidak berani melakukan itu ke orang yang melakukan kekerasannya, tapi nantinya untuk menumbuhkan perilaku kekerasan itu ke orang-orang lainnya gitu, yang itu jadi membuat masyarakat kita tidak aman. Nah, itu tadi gimana caranya supaya bisa tetap ruang kelas ini ada guru tetap terjaga marwahnya, siswa tetap aman, itu kembali lagi ya. Diingat bahwa ketika kita mengajar itu bukanlah bentuk perintah ya gitu ya, tapi juga adalah bagaimana kita mengenal anak-anak kita ini, kemudian apa yang mereka butuhkan dan memenuhi kebutuhan itu. Karena yang saya pelajari ketika anak itu rewel, itu memang mereka ada kebutuhan yang butuh untuk dipenuhi gitu, bukan sekedar ingin menyakiti kita yang dewasa gitu. Kalau yang saya pelajari parenting sih gitu sih. Nah, gimana Mas Enrico, mungkin ada hal yang ingin kita bahas lagi nih.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. So she helped to translate your
good. Thank
your
you.
answer in Bahasa Indonesia, in Indonesian language, so the
Thank
other
you.
audience can properly understand your statement. Okay, since we are discussing about education, and in Indonesia, access to education is considered as a constitutional rights for the children, because on the perspective of Indonesia constitution, the best interest for the child is one of it is an easy access to education. So since we are talking about education, there is one case that I would like to ask your opinion, both as an attorney and also
Mhm.
as an experienced social welfare officer. So there is a case here in Indonesia that became a public attention. So a child, he lived in a rural area. So I think he's still in a primary school. I think, yeah, in the primary school, just around 10 years old. So he asked to his parent that he wanted to have $1. The money that he asked is he wanted to use it to buy some school supplies, so like writing books, pen, pencil, sort of like that. So if it is converted to dollar, it's just $1. But since uh, his family is a low income classes family, and it is also illegal for the government in Indonesia to take to remove such kids just because his parents is living in poverty,
Mhm.
like that. So there is not much can do by the government. But sadly, this story ended in not a well. Uh, this will be a sad ending story because since he doesn't been granted $1 from his parent, sadly he committed a suicide. Later on his letter, he write that please don't be sad when I go to departure. At least I am not a burden for you. If I'm not mistake to take when I read the notes. And then there is some call from Indonesian society that the government must ensure any uh, child, especially from the low class, that they have an easy right to education, including they have a school supply that provided by the government. I think if this happened in New York, uh, it will be a very special cases. Even I don't know. In Indonesia, this case became a public viewing, a
Common.
public
Right.
attention because,
Very
yeah,
common. Well,
the child later
that's
commits suicide.
Right.
How about how about you think if this happened in US?
So,
Mm,
I mean, in the US, I can't speak to rural areas because I
mm,
don't really know. I mean, in New
mm,
York, certainly there's poverty.
mm,
If a child didn't have supplies for school
mm,
and the parents refused to do what they needed to do to get
mm,
him the supplies,
mm,
either by asking the school, by informing the
mm,
school that they needed assistance,
mm,
because the school would provide that.
mm,
I
mhm,
mean, that's the thing. Like during COVID, um, all children got iPads so they could interact with the remote learning.
mm,
So in New York, that wouldn't happen.
mm,
What might happen is there are parents who, and you can file, ACS does file for
mm,
educational neglect, who like
mm,
don't wake up in the morning to bring their children to school. I mean, and if you're
mm, mm,
15 or 14 or 13, really up until 12, um, you can't really get to school by yourself until you're like 12, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and there are children who do go and like go out by themselves and wake themselves up and do all of that, but the school is going to be like, what's going on? You're too little to come to school by yourself, and there's no school. I mean, there are school buses, so sometimes there are parents who don't wake up to bring their children. So if you don't bring your child to school, you can get an educational neglect, especially if your child wants to go to school. There are cases where the children just won't go to school and the parents can't make them. They have school phobia or something like that. And those cases they don't go anywhere because it's not the parent's fault. But if a parent is actively not bringing their child to school and has not filed for homeschooling, you can homeschool your child. There can be a case of neglect because you do have to go to school every day.
Okay.
Kalau di Indonesia tuh ada nggak sih kayak homeschool kayak gitu?
So,
I'm sorry, I'm talking like Indonesia and English, Marta, if it's okay with you.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I think because in uh, in New York, government have an actively ensuring that there is no child being neglected. Their education, their welfare, they're healthy. But here in Indonesia, sadly, yeah, we have a special authority. We have social welfare department. We have child and woman protection agency. But sadly, uh, they didn't act like they supposed to act. So sometimes they face a lot of criticism from the public. For instance, like the case that I mentioned before, why you
And I
guys
think
didn't prevent
it's not
this kind?
intentionally though, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
intentionally because it's kind of like budget problem and then like uh bureaucracy problem, stuff like that. As yeah, because we're still developing. And I mean, like when in New York, it will be very special case if a child doesn't come to school every day. Meanwhile, in our country, like in several areas, it's
Hmm.
a common thing.
Yeah.
Even in Papua, children doesn't go to school because they have to help their parents to hunt,
Mhm.
and several other areas too. So this is like pretty complex case.
Yeah, yeah. It is a complex case for Indonesia. I agree with you. Okay. Uh, Thank you, Martha, for your explanation about this. Is there any more question
Uh,
about this
Actually,
topic?
I
Yes.
still have one if it is allowed.
Yeah, sure. And since we are running out of time, maybe this will be our last question for today. So, Bu Novi, please.
Okay, thank you, because this is very interesting topics. Martha, we haven't talked about technology because I think technology it's inevitable, right? Nowadays,
Mhm.
and you know that online grooming and exploitation are growing everywhere, especially in Indonesia, where families and schools often lack digital literacy. In the US, do they have what legal duties do platforms and institutions have, and what enforcement tools are actually effective, not just symbolic? Thank you.
You mean for online predators and things like
Yes.
that? I mean,
Yes.
unfortunately, parents struggle with that all the time. I mean, and there's not a lot of things that really, we have all sorts of like, I don't have little children, so I don't know like exactly, but there's all sorts of like things you can put on their phones and controls that you can do. But if kids want to like bypass them, they can. And so I mean, the Administration for Children's Services has the same problem as the parents do because they have children in their care. So everybody is struggling with it all the time. I mean, I represent a lot of parents, I represent a lot of children, and I talk to their parents, and it's a constant worry. And there's really because I mean, you can even get, predators can even get them through video games. Like, it is just a constant problem. And there's really I mean, schools, the only thing anyone does is teach. I mean, that's all anyone can do. So there's always a curriculum about safety and things like that. Parents, I haven't met a parent who's like, oh, just go at it and do whatever you want on the internet. I mean, there's no cases where parents are allowing their children. I've never come across too much access to the internet. The issue is it's unstoppable, really. And my experience, and especially it's probably worse in New York because children, they're, I think that the access to drugs and things like that is greater. So if a predator meets a child and like drugs, it's a problem. I mean, there's really no controls over it. And I'm not really, I mean, I think everyone struggles with it all the time.
Controlling the internet is actually very required right now because Indonesia, Marta, we are not just experiencing demoralization of our young generations, but also right now there are so many abusive conducted by the children even, not just to other people but to themselves, like suicide and etc. I mean, I couldn't imagine what they've been through.
Right.
I feel like they back then I feel like we're not gonna have an idea about suicide etc because we don't know about it, but with the internet access we have to let them know what they should know and what not to do, I think.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that bullying, I mean, I know from my son, there's huge parts of the curriculum are anti-bullying. Like, anti-bullying is, but children are children. They bully. I mean, that's unfortunately what they do. And so, what I
Yeah,
mean? It's something that happens with children. And so,
they make
they,
fun of each other, actually they're connecting. Right?
exactly. And it's just gotten to the point where it's, especially because of the internet, it's crazy. And, but there's really, I mean, we haven't been able to stop it. And I don't really know if anyone's figured out a way, to stop it.
Yeah, it's
And
like
I don't
they're
think
forced to be mature earlier.
exactly. I think that's a problem. And I think that, it's only going to get worse. I mean, I think because, in the United States, the president is a bully. So, right. So he's bullying people and he makes it okay to be really cruel to people. And so that trickles down. It really does. So that's a big problem when your president is a bully and not kind to people. Children see that. And even if their parents are like, oh my God, that's terrible, children see it. And he's the president. And so, like, if he's allowed to do it, why can't I be absolutely cruel to someone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit scared to talk about that. It's it's ironic. That's all I can
Yeah.
say because with current situation in Epstein files, etc. It's wow, it's very scary to see that.
Very scary. And, but I mean, it's just when I was like in seventh grade, definitely there were bullies, but it wasn't like not like it is today. And there wasn't the internet where people can post pictures on people. I mean, it has gotten out of control. And children don't have good judgment often, which is why, going back to my original point, is why direct advocacy is great, but you have to rely on the judge to make the decision because children don't always have great judgment.
Mm.
That's what schools teach them is judgment. I mean, that's the primary purpose of school in some level.
I'm a little bit confused to conclude this because this is very complex and we are still exploring the solutions right now.
Right.
Something that cannot be done in a day, though.
No.
No. Yeah.
It's a very interesting topic and too bad. I think in Indonesia we're currently in fasting months. I'm afraid people is feeling tired already and have to prepare for tomorrow sahur. So kita mungkin bakal menyudahi.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting insight from you, Martha. Thank you so much for your legal insight and helping us understand the current situation in U.S. Child
But
protection.
if anyone has any questions, they can email me.
Yeah,
Oh, sure.
please.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Could you share your email in your chat, in the chat?
Let me see. Okay, yeah, I can, I think.
Thank you, Martha. You're so kind.
Whoops, sorry. I just
Thank
put
you
it
so
bigger up.
much for being here. Okay.
Anytime. Thank you.
Oke, teman-teman yang mau ngobrol lebih dalam lagi terkait permasalahan perlindungan anak dan kesejahteraan anak, bisa langsung email untuk ngobrol sama Martha dengan insight-nya beliau ya. Untuk malam ini kita akan menutup podcast hari ini dulu. Terima kasih atas kehadirannya semuanya. Thank you again, Martha, for being here with us. I hope we can see you again.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
anytime.
Thank you, Martha, for your insight.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
Mas Enrico, thank you
Yeah.
udah hadir hari ini ya, dan teman-teman
Thank you.
semuanya.
Terima
Oke,
kasih.
semoga lancar puasanya.
Have a nice weekend.
Have a
Oke,
nice
have
weekend
a nice
all.
weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Okay, we'll see you in the next episode, by the way. So,
Ya. Sampai ketemu di episode
sampai ketemu di
selanjutnya,
episode
teman-teman.
selanjutnya.
Ya.
Oke. Kita kayaknya
Mari.
perlu penutup deh, Mas. Kayak, Uner hebat kah? Apa nih, kok ada screen sharing dari...
Ah.
Oke. Bye-bye, everyone. Uner, hebat. Bye-bye.